General walked slowly into the great war chamber of the Dominion. His old legs hurt with every step, and the scars on his face told stories of battles fought long ago. The chamber was filled with the most powerful leaders of the empire. They sat in tall chairs made of black stone, looking down at him like he was nothing more than a tired old soldier. The High Emperor sat on his throne at the center. His four eyes watched with a mix of boredom and amusement. Around him sat admirals, generals, and counselors who had never lost a war. The Dominion had conquered over 200 species across the galaxy. They believed nothing could stand against them. "You asked to speak, General," the Emperor said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "We are busy planning our next conquest. Make it quick." Took a deep breath. "My Emperor, I have come to beg you. Do not invade the planet called Earth. Do not attack the species called humans." Silence filled the chamber for a moment. Then laughter erupted from every corner. Counselor, who sat closest to the Emperor, shook his head with a smile. "The great general, hero of the campaign, is afraid of primitives," said. "These humans have barely left their own star system. They have a small fleet and limited technology. Why should we fear them?" "Because I have fought them," said. His voice was steady and serious. 40 years ago, we had a border conflict with a human colony. It was supposed to be a simple matter. 3,000 humans against 50,000 of our warriors. Admiral leaned forward in her chair. She was young and hungry for glory. "And you won, did you not? The records show we claimed that territory." "We claimed burned ground and empty buildings," replied. "It took us 18 months to defeat 3,000 of them. 18 months. We lost 30,000 soldiers. When we finally broke through their defenses, we found they had already evacuated their children and elderly. The ones who stayed behind fought until their last breath. Some of them kept fighting even after they were wounded so badly they should have been dead." The Emperor waved his hand dismissively. "That was one colony, one small group of desperate creatures fighting for their homes. It means nothing." "It means everything," said. He stepped closer to the throne, his old eyes burning with intensity. "Every species we have conquered followed the same pattern. They fought, they lost, and they surrendered. They accepted their place under our rule. But humans do not surrender. They do not accept defeat. When you push them into a corner, they become more dangerous, not less." "You speak of them like they are monsters," said with a mocking tone. "No," said quietly. "I speak of them like they are survivors. Their world is not like ours. Their planet is covered with predators, diseases, natural disasters, and extreme weather. They did not evolve in peace. They evolved fighting for their lives every single day. That struggle made them into something we have never faced before." Admiral stood up from her chair. "General, with respect, you are old. Perhaps the years have made your memory weak. I have studied the reports on human military capability. Their ships are slower than ours. Their weapons are less powerful. Their numbers are smaller. Mathematics does not lie." "Mathematics does not measure the human spirit," said. "I watched a human soldier with both legs destroyed drag himself across a battlefield to throw one last explosive at our position. I saw human doctors treating our wounded prisoners with the same care they gave their own people. I heard human commanders refuse to abandon fallen comrades even when rescue meant certain death." The Emperor raised his hand to silence the murmuring crowd. "Enough of this. General, you have served the Dominion well for many years. I will honor that service by not punishing you for this display of cowardice. But my decision is made. Earth will be our next conquest. Their resources and strategic position are too valuable to ignore." "My Emperor, please," said, his voice breaking. "I am not asking for myself. I am asking for the lives of millions of our soldiers. You have conquered the weak. You have conquered the compliant. You have conquered the reasonable. Humans are none of these things. If you attack there, you will awaken something terrible." The Emperor smiled coldly. "Admiral, you will lead the invasion fleet. 3,000 ships should be more than enough to crush these primitives." bowed her head, her eyes bright with excitement. "It will be my honor, my emperor. I will bring you their surrender within 1 month." Felt his heart sink. He looked around the chamber at all the proud faces, all the confident smiles. None of them understood. None of them wanted to understand. "You are making a mistake," he said one last time. "The greatest mistake in the history of our empire." Counselor gestured to the guards. "Remove the general. He is clearly unwell." As the guards led him away, looked back at the chamber. He saw Admiral already discussing fleet formations with her officers. He saw the Emperor turning to other matters as if the conversation had never happened. That night stood at the window of his quarters and watched the invasion fleet depart. 3,000 warships, carrying millions of soldiers, heading toward a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. He had seen this same fleet crush entire civilizations in weeks. But he had also seen what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. "May the stars have mercy on them," he whispered to himself, "because the humans will not." The fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, carrying with it the pride of an empire that had never known defeat. They flew toward Earth with confidence and certainty. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship and smiled. Through the viewing screen, she could see the edge of the human star system. Her fleet of 3,000 warships stretched out behind her like a river of death. In all her years of service, she had never commanded such power. "Begin broadcast of the standard ultimatum," she ordered. Her communications officer sent the message that had broken the will of 200 species before. "People of Earth, you face the might of the Dominion. Your choices are simple. Surrender now and serve us or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to respond." Expected fear, she expected panic, she expected desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, a calm human voice replied through the speakers. "This is Commander Jake of Earth Defense Command. You are not welcome here. Leave now or face the consequences." The bridge crew exchanged confused looks, laughed out loud. "Consequences? They have fewer than 200 ships against our 3,000 and they threaten us with consequences." She shook her head in amusement. "Ignore them. All ships, advance into the system." The Dominion fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a wall of metal and firepower that had crushed everything in its path. Watched the human ships on her tactical display. They were smaller, older, and clearly outmatched. Then the humans did something unexpected. Instead of forming a defensive line like every other species, the human ships scattered. They flew in different directions, disappearing into asteroid fields and behind moons. Within minutes, the organized fleet had broken apart into dozens of small groups. "What are they doing?" asked. "Are they running away?" "Unknown, Admiral," her tactical officer replied. "Their movements seem random." "It does not matter. Continue the advance." The Dominion fleet pushed deeper into the system. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Felt a small knot of worry forming in her stomach, but she pushed it away. She was not going to be afraid of primitives. The first attack came from nowhere. A group of human ships burst out of an asteroid field on the fleet's left side. They fired a volley of missiles and then disappeared before the Dominion ships could return fire. Explosions ripped through 3 cruisers. "Contact left," the tactical officer shouted. Before anyone could respond, another group attacked from the right, then from above, then from below. The human ships struck like insects, biting and retreating before the larger predator could swat them. They are using the environment as cover, realized. They know this system better than we do. In the first hour of battle, the Dominion lost 40 ships. It was more than had expected to lose in the entire campaign. On one of the human ships, Lieutenant Amy Cole listened to Dominion communications through her translator equipment. She heard confusion, frustration, and the first hints of fear. She smiled and reported to Commander. "They are getting angry," she said. Their commanders are arguing with each other about how to respond. Jake nodded from his command chair aboard the orbital station. Good. Angry enemies make mistakes. Tell Captain Danny Shaw to begin Phase 2. Danny Shaw was the best pilot in Earth's fleet. He flew a fast attack ship called the Silver Arrow, and he led a squadron of equally skilled pilots. When he received the order, he grinned at his crew. "Time to show them what humans can do," he said. "All wings follow me." His squadron flew straight at the Dominion flagship. It was suicide by any reasonable calculation. But Danny was not thinking about calculations. He was thinking about his daughter back on Earth, the one who would grow up in chains if he failed. The Dominion gunners fired everything they had at the approaching ships. Danny weaved through the fire like he was dancing. Two of his pilots were not as lucky, their ships exploding in bright flashes, but the rest made it through. They did not fire at the flagship. Instead, they attached themselves to its hull. "What are they doing?" demanded. "They appear to be boarding us, Admiral." Boarding? Could not believe it. No species has ever attempted to board a Dominion warship in combat. But the humans were already cutting through the hull. Sergeant Ben Taylor led the boarding party, his rifle ready. He had fought in 3 colonial conflicts, and he had never lost a battle. He was not planning to start now. The Dominion soldiers inside the ship were not prepared for close combat. They were trained to fight at a distance, using superior technology to overwhelm their enemies. But in the narrow corridors of the ship, technology mattered less than courage and skill. Ben and his team moved through the ship like ghosts. They took the engine room in 10 minutes. The flagship was now dead in space. Admiral received the report with a pale face. Her own ship had been captured. Around her, the battle continued and the losses mounted. Human ships appeared and disappeared, striking where the Dominion was weakest. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "our ground forces are reporting that they are ready for planetary invasion. They ask if they should proceed." Looked at the battle around her. She had already lost nearly 100 ships. The old general's warnings echoed in her mind. But she could not retreat. Retreat meant disgrace. Retreat meant admitting that had been right. "Tell the ground forces to proceed," she ordered. "We will bypass these defenders and strike Earth directly. Once we control their planet, their fleet will have to surrender." It was a desperate gamble, but believed that once humans saw their cities burning, they would break like every other species. She did not understand that for humans, watching their cities burn would not break them. It would only make them angry. As the Dominion transports headed toward Earth, Commander Jake watched them come. He opened a channel to every human on the planet. "They are coming," he said simply. "Show them what we are made of." Across Earth, billions of people heard his words, and not one of them was afraid. The Dominion transports broke through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Thousands of landing craft descended toward the major cities, carrying soldiers who expected easy victory. Admiral watched from her remaining ships in orbit, confident that the ground invasion would succeed where the space battle had struggled. She expected to see humans running in panic. She expected to see cities emptying as people fled for their lives. Instead, every continent on Earth began broadcasting the same message on all frequencies: "We stand together." In a military laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Lisa Grant had been working without sleep for 3 days. And she had been studying captured Dominion soldiers since the first boarding action. What she discovered changed everything. "Their entire command structure is based on pheromones," she explained to Commander Jake over a secure channel. "Their officers release chemical signals that their soldiers follow without question. If we disrupt those signals, their armies will fall apart." Jake leaned forward. "Can you make something that does that?" "I already have." Lisa held up a small canister. "This chemical blocks their pheromone receptors. When exposed to it, Dominion soldiers lose their connection to their commanders. They become confused, disorganized, and unable to coordinate. How fast can you produce more? We have factories working around the clock. We will have enough for every major battlefield within 12 hours. The ground invasion had already begun. Dominion soldiers poured into New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities. They expected terrified civilians hiding in their homes. They found something very different. Sergeant Ben Taylor had been transported back to Earth after capturing the Dominion flagship. Now he stood in the ruins of Chicago, coordinating resistance forces across North America. His radio never stopped crackling with reports. "Civilians are bringing us ammunition in shopping carts," one soldier reported. A group of construction workers used their cranes to drop concrete blocks on a Dominion patrol, another said. High school kids are mapping enemy positions using drones they built themselves. Ben smiled grimly. The Dominion had never fought a species where everyone was a combatant. On their previous conquests, they simply had to defeat the military and the civilians would submit. But humans did not work that way. An old woman named Carson became famous that day. She was 73 years old and ran a small bakery in Philadelphia. When Dominion soldiers marched down her street, she did not run. Instead, she opened her oven and threw boiling cooking oil at them from her window. While they screamed in pain, local fighters emerged from hiding and took them down. Was just one of millions. Farmers used their tractors as weapons. Teachers turned their schools into fortresses. Children as young as 10 carried messages between resistance cells. Every person on Earth understood that this was not just a war for territory. It was a war for survival. In the skies above Earth, Captain Danny Shaw led what remained of the human air forces. His squadron had lost half its pilots in the space battle, but the survivors fought with desperate courage. "Targeting enemy landing ship," Danny announced, diving toward a massive Dominion transport. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky around him, but he did not pull away. He fired every missile he had, and the transport exploded in a ball of fire. His ship was badly damaged in the blast. Smoke filled the cockpit and alarms screamed warnings. Any sane pilot would eject. Danny was not feeling very sane. He saw another transport nearby and aimed his burning ship directly at it. "Shaw, pull out," Jake ordered over the radio. "No time, Commander. Tell my daughter I love her." Danny ejected at the last possible moment. His ship crashed into the transport's engine section, and both vessels fell from the sky. Danny's parachute opened, and he floated down toward the battlefield below, already reaching for his sidearm. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral received reports that made her blood run cold. The invasion was failing. For every human killed, 10 more seemed to appear. Her soldiers reported that wounded humans continued fighting. They reported that human commanders refused to retreat even when surrounded. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Admiral, we have received orders from the Emperor himself." Read the message and felt her stomach twist. The Emperor commanded her to use orbital bombardment. He wanted her to burn human cities from space. "This has never been necessary before," she said quietly. "The Emperor's orders are clear, Admiral." Looked at Earth through the viewing screen. Millions of people were down there fighting for their homes, their families, their future. She had wanted glory. She had wanted to add another conquest to her record. But this did not feel like glory. It felt like murder. Before she could give the order, her communications officer spoke again. "Admiral, the humans have intercepted our transmission. They are broadcasting it to their entire planet." On Earth, every screen, every radio, every speaker played Commander Jake's voice. "People of Earth, I have just received confirmation of what we suspected. The Dominion plans to burn our cities from orbit. They cannot defeat us on the ground, so they will try to destroy us from space." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. "They think this will break us. They think we will surrender to save ourselves. But I ask you, all of you, is there anyone who will submit to these invaders? Is there anyone who will bow down to those who would murder our children?" The response came from every corner of the planet. In 1,000 different languages, in 1,000,000 different voices, the answer was the same. "Never." Jake opened a channel to his remaining fleet commanders. "All ships prepare for Operation Last Stand. We are not defending anymore. We are attacking." In the streets of cities around the world, humans heard the order, and instead of fear, they felt something else. Hope. They were going to take the fight to the enemy, and the Dominion had no idea what was coming. Operation Last Stand was the most desperate military action in human history. Every remaining ship, every available soldier, every weapon that could be fired was committed to a single goal: board and capture the Dominion fleet before they could burn Earth. Commander Jake led the assault personally. He stood in the cargo bay of a boarding shuttle, surrounded by 100 Marines. Some of them were professional soldiers. Others were volunteers who had never fired a weapon before today. It did not matter. They were all ready to die for their planet. "Listen up," Jake said as the shuttle raced toward the Dominion flagship. "We are about to do something no species has ever done before. We are going to board an enemy fleet in the middle of battle. Half of us will not survive the next hour, but if we succeed, we save Earth. We save everyone we love. Is that worth dying for?" The Marines answered with a single word: "Yes." The shuttle slammed into the hull of the flagship. Jake felt the impact through his boots as the cutting equipment began burning through the metal. Seconds later, they were inside. Dr. Lisa Grant's pheromone disruptor had been distributed throughout the boarding teams. As soon as the humans entered the Dominion ships, they released the chemical agent into the ventilation systems. The effect was immediate and devastating. Dominion soldiers who had been organized and disciplined suddenly became confused. They bumped into each other, gave contradictory orders, and in some cases began fighting among themselves. The chemical connection that held their military together had been severed. "The disruptor is working," Lieutenant Amy Cole reported from the command station. She was monitoring communications across the Dominion fleet. "Their commanders are screaming at each other. No one knows what is happening." Jake pushed deeper into the flagship, his team clearing corridor after corridor. Dominion soldiers fell before them, unable to coordinate their defense. Some of them just stood in confusion, not understanding why their bodies would not obey their officers' commands. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Human boarding parties swarmed through Dominion ships, taking engine rooms and bridges while the enemy stumbled around in chemical-induced chaos. Captain Danny Shaw had survived his crash landing and linked up with ground forces. When he heard that the fleet action was succeeding, he organized a counterattack against the remaining Dominion soldiers on Earth. "Push them back to their landing zones," he ordered. "Do not let a single one of them escape." Sergeant Ben Taylor led the charge in North America. His forces swept through Chicago, street by street, building by building. The Dominion soldiers who had landed with such confidence just hours ago were now running for their lives. "They are retreating," Ben reported. "Their ground forces are completely broken." On the flagship, Jake finally reached the bridge. The doors had been sealed, but his engineers cut through them in minutes. When they burst inside, Admiral was waiting. She stood alone in the center of the bridge. Her officers had either fled or been captured. Her guards had fallen to the pheromone disruptor. She held a small pistol, but she did not raise it. "Commander, I assume," she said. Her voice was tired, defeated. Admiral Jake kept his rifle trained on her. "Your fleet is broken. Your ground forces are retreating. You have lost." Lowered her pistol and let it fall to the floor. I have a question, Commander. Before you take me prisoner, I need to understand something. Ask. Why do you fight so hard? Her 4 eyes searched his face for an answer. We offered you a place in our empire. You would have been servants, yes, but you would have lived. Your cities would have been spared. Your children would have grown up in peace. Why did you choose war instead? Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about his wife, who was working as a nurse in a field hospital right now. He thought about his son, who had been evacuated to an underground shelter. He thought about every human on Earth who had picked up a weapon today. Because this is our home, he said finally. We have nowhere else to go, and because we choose to fight, it is who we are. Nodded slowly. General tried to tell us. He said you were different. He said you did not fight like other species. She looked around her ruined bridge. I did not listen. None of us did. Then you will tell your emperor what happened here, Jake said. You will tell him that Earth is not his to take. The emperor will not stop, warned. He will send more ships, more soldiers. He will burn your world to ash before he admits defeat. Then we will beat them too, and the ones after that, and the ones after that. Jake lowered his rifle and held out his hand. But right now, you have a choice. You can continue this war or you can help us end it. Stared at his hand. In all the history of the Dominion, no enemy had ever offered mercy to a defeated admiral. They expected to be executed or tortured. Not this. Why would you show me kindness, she asked, after everything we have done? Because we are not you, Jake said simply. We fight hard, but we also forgive. It is another thing that makes us human. Reached out and took his hand. I surrender my fleet to you, Commander, and I will tell the Emperor exactly what happened here. Whether he listens or not is beyond my control. Outside the flagship, the last Dominion ships were being boarded or destroyed. On the ground, human forces had pushed the invaders back to their landing zones. The skies over Earth were no longer filled with enemy vessels. For the first time since the invasion began, humans looked up and saw their own stars. But Jake knew this was not over. The Emperor was still out there, and his pride would not allow him to accept defeat. The war had been won today, but the real battle was just beginning. The great war chamber of the Dominion was silent. The counselors who had laughed at General sat in their tall chairs with pale faces and empty eyes. The news from Earth had traveled across the Empire like a disease. 3,000 ships sent, fewer than 400 returned. High Emperor sat on his throne, gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white. His 4 eyes burned with rage and shame. In 10,000 years, the Dominion had never suffered such a defeat, and it had come at the hands of primitives. Bring me, the Emperor commanded. The old general was escorted into the chamber. He walked slowly, his old legs still aching, but his head was held high. He had been proven right, and everyone in this room knew it. You warned us, the Emperor said. Each word sounded like it caused him physical pain. You begged us to leave them alone. Tell me, General, tell me why we failed. Looked around the chamber at all the proud faces that were now broken. He took no pleasure in their suffering. He only felt tired. You failed because you did not understand what you were fighting, he began. For 10,000 years, we have conquered species that evolved on peaceful worlds, gentle worlds with stable climates and few predators. Those species developed civilization through cooperation and comfort. He paused to let his words sink in. Humans are different. Their planet is what they call a death world. It is covered with creatures that want to eat them. It is struck by storms that destroy entire cities. It carries diseases that have killed millions of their kind. Their own history is filled with wars so brutal that even we would be horrified. Counselor spoke up, his voice trembling. But they seemed so weak. Their technology was inferior. Their numbers were small. Technology and numbers are not everything, replied. We evolved to build empires. Humans evolved to survive. When you push them into a corner, they do not surrender. They become more dangerous. They become desperate. And a desperate human is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The Emperor slammed his fist on his throne. Then we will send a larger fleet, 10,000 ships, 100,000. We will crush them with numbers they cannot possibly defeat. And they will defeat you again, said calmly. Every time you attack them, they will learn, they will adapt, they will find new ways to hurt you. That is what they do. That is what they have always done. A communication screen on the wall flickered to life. The face of Commander Jake appeared. His uniform was torn and dirty from battle, but his eyes were clear and strong. Leaders of the Dominion, Jake said, I am commander of Earth Defense Command. Your invasion fleet has been destroyed. Your admiral is our prisoner, along with tens of thousands of your soldiers. The counselors shifted nervously in their seats. They had never been addressed by an enemy before. Enemies were supposed to be conquered, not negotiate. We did not ask for this war, Jake continued. You came to our home with weapons and threats. We defended ourselves. Now I offer you a choice. The Emperor leaned forward. What choice? You can accept peace. Return our prisoners and we will return yours. Leave human space and we will not pursue you. We can learn to live as neighbors instead of enemies. And if we refuse, the Emperor demanded. Jake's expression did not change. Then we will bring this war to your worlds. We have studied your technology. We have learned your weaknesses. Admiral has told us much about your empire. If you force us to fight, we will not stop until your throne is ashes. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. How dare this primitive threaten the Emperor of the Dominion? How dare he speak as if humans were equals? But notice something that others did not. The Emperor was afraid. Behind his rage and his pride, there was real fear in his eyes. He had finally understood what had tried to tell him. We do not surrender, the Emperor declared. We do not make peace with inferiors. I will build a new fleet, a larger fleet, and I will personally lead the destruction of your pathetic world. Jake nodded slowly. Then you have made your choice. I am sorry for the soldiers who will die following your orders. The screen went dark. Begin construction of the new invasion fleet immediately, the Emperor ordered. I want 10,000 ships ready within 1 year. Watched the Emperor issue orders that would doom millions of Dominion soldiers. He thought about all the young warriors who would die because of one leader's pride. He thought about the families who would lose their children in a war that should never have started. And he made a decision. My Emperor said, stepping forward, may I approach the throne? The Emperor waved him forward impatiently, climbed the steps slowly, his old bones protesting every movement. The guards watched but did not stop him. He was an old general after all. What threat could he pose? When reached the throne, he drew a small blade from his sleeve and drove it into the Emperor's heart. The chamber exploded in chaos. Guards rushed forward, counselors screamed, but it was too late. High Emperor the Undying died with a look of complete surprise on his face. Dropped the blade and raised his hands. I claim emergency command of the Dominion under the law of succession crisis. Any who oppose me, speak now. No one spoke. The counselors were too shocked, the guards were too confused, and somewhere deep in their hearts they were relieved. The Emperor's pride had been leading them toward disaster. Open a channel to Earth, commanded. When Commander appeared on the screen again, bowed his head. Commander, I am General, acting leader of the Dominion. I offer unconditional peace. I will withdraw all forces from human space, return all prisoners, and recognize Earth as sovereign territory. Jake studied the old general's face, and the Emperor. The Emperor made a poor decision. I corrected it. There was silence for a long moment, then Jake nodded. We accept your peace, General. Perhaps now we can build something better. 6 months later, human and Dominion representatives met on a space station between their territories. It was the first time the two species had spoken as equals. General shook Commander Jake's hand while cameras recorded the historic moment. "I warned them," said quietly. "I begged them to leave humanity alone. They chose not to listen." "And now," Jake asked, "now I hope you can forgive us for our arrogance. The Dominion has much to learn about dealing with species we cannot conquer." Jake smiled. "We do not hold children responsible for the sins of their fathers, General. Let us look forward, not backward." Looked at the human standing before him. This creature from a death world, this survivor who had brought an empire to its knees. He finally understood why humans were so dangerous. It was not their weapons or their tactics. It was their spirit, their refusal to give up, their ability to see enemies as potential friends. "Leave humanity alone," said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "I should have made that our law, not just a warning." Jake heard him and laughed. "It is not too late, General. You can make it a law now." And he did. The phrase, "leave humanity alone," was carved into the walls of the Dominion's war chamber. It remained there for 10,000 years, a reminder of what happened when an empire chose to ignore the warning. The humans never forgot either. They told the story to their children and their children's children. The story of how a small blue planet stood against the greatest empire in the galaxy and won. Not through strength alone, but through courage, unity, and the unbreakable human spirit.